Well, in today's episode, we're focusing on key areas that support the growth of real estate in Kenya. We've got one Patrick Silili Adolwa, who's a planner and urban specialist with over 35 years experience in urban planning and development. We thought it would be best to find out from Patrick's lens on just how we can just improve the real estate sector from a planning perspective. And welcome back to Property Focus. In today's episode, we're joined with seasoned urban planner John Adolwa, who's going to be telling us about the role of urban planning on infrastructure, the role of urban planning on real estate, and also the role of active citizenship on urban planning. Welcome to the show, sir. How are you doing?
Good, thank you.
Yes, brilliant. Glad to have you.
Thank you so much for having me here.
Yes, introduce yourself briefly.
My name is Patrick Adolwa. Again, I'm an urban specialist with a background in urban planning.
Yes.
A whole range of subject areas like smart cities, now climate change as well, urban policy.
Tell me about the impact of infrastructure on real estate development, according to you.
Many people do not realize that real estate has to be undertaken within a certain context.
Okay.
And this is usually taken for granted that planning is not required. So we always have a false start, because for you to develop territory, that territory has to be identified. And even if it is part of a whole urban system, it has to be determined what kind of development should happen in those spaces. And usually that is predetermined in a plan.
Yes.
So a plan sets out how a city's territorial space is to be developed for various activities so that you can achieve harmony, economy, and sustainability, and so on and so forth.
Right.
So these things are taken for granted because we have yet to get into that urban culture. And therefore, when we develop things, we don't think there is a context in which they're supposed to be done. So that's where our problems begin. And that also is a problem of leaders that we elect in urban areas, because sometimes many of them are not from an urban background, so they do not understand the whole question of urbanization, urban planning, and urban development. For me, that just comes naturally. I mean, urbanization requires that you structure a place such that when you undertake urban development, it is on the basis of a certain framework. Because you have to have sustainability, you have to use your resources in a structured manner, and it has to be done in such a manner that it has economic impact. Yes.
Interesting. Well, just for our viewers, who is an urban planner? What is the role of an urban planner?
So an urban planner is that person amongst other professionals who determines how urban development activities should be structured in space, in an urban space. Okay? Just like an architect determines what the structure of a house should be, how many rooms should be in there, what purposes should each one of those rooms play, an urban planner is a professional who determines how land is used in an urban place and accorded to different economic activities, development activities that need to constitute an urban system. Because an urban system is composed of many economic activities, many cultural activities, many infrastructure and services that must be accommodated in space. So it is the responsibility of an urban planner to put all these things in a space. And the reason they do it is because space is limited and it must be used in a very judicious way for sustainability, for economy, and for efficiency as well.
Speaking about space being finite and the supply in the market just as it is right now, what's the current state of affairs with infrastructure and developments? Lots of skyscrapers are skyscraping or mushrooming.
Well,
yes.
That's the crisis of our day, and it may manifest itself physically, but it really is our mental state, okay? And it is the political economy of the day. Because people have refused to understand that we need need to develop our cities sustainably. And when we see cities being developed the way they're being developed now, it's because city plans have been ignored. And leaders, especially civic leaders, in our country, I think the word civic leader is beginning to disappear, because where we were supposed to have municipalities, now we have governors and we have MCAs, and the whole municipal culture and approach to urban development has been completely lost, because we do not have individuals who understand the traditional municipal approach to things. So we don't have strong municipal culture, and therefore we don't have people to help us plan urban development that is sustainable. So how do we end up with skyscrapers that are unwanted? It's because we have not determined what our last mile development should be. We've not done what we call local economic plans, local area development plans, which are detailed urban plans that define how the last mile territorial development should happen, what kind of human densities, what kind of economic activities should take place in those spaces, what kind of infrastructure and services we should drive to any particular space on the ground. Okay, that is a space for which we really need a lot more, concentration. If for lack of a better word, I think we need to rethink how we do last mile urban development, because we need to do it on the basis of a local area development plan, which defines in minute detail what happens at a plot level, okay, and what services are supplied to development at a plot level, and whether it is a single dwelling unit or it is a multiple dwelling unit. Okay. And so what is happening today is we are having multiple dwelling units substitute properties and destinations which were designed to only handle single dwelling units without augmenting the infrastructure and services. Okay? That is the problem we are faced with.
Brilliant. Very well answered. Very well answered. Yes. I'd like you to have a look at this, watch this, and tell me what you think.
As somebody who has spent many, many years, in fact, majority of my life in Nairobi, I have watched the continuous deterioration of the state of infrastructure, of amenities in Nairobi. And this goes hand in hand with an uncontrolled, what I would call illegal and irregular construction, because these constructions don't exist within the framework of any plan for Nairobi. So I'm very concerned, because you see a proliferation of apartments, of all manner of mixed-use developments that don't sit anywhere within the master plan for Nairobi, known as a new plan that was supposed to run from 2014 to 2030. Kenyans are on their own.
Brilliant. So you've just watched that video. What are your thoughts on this? What can be done?
Our problem is much more with what I would call unsustainable urbanization. And it is born out of either ignorance or arrogance in certain quarters. And I said that sometimes citizens have a responsibility that they're not often called to own up to. You know, I mean, there are obligations, but there are also responsibilities. There are rights and so on, but also responsibilities. Citizens do not seem to understand this. People in the political class often do not understand this. They think that power is all there is to this. Yes, you can have power, but you can also use the power to bring down a place. And so what you see as illegal development, yes, is patently illegal, but to me, the most fundamental issue here is the sustainability of urbanization. And when I say sustainability, every urban area is designed in such a manner that it has what we call capacity to hold, holding capacity, okay? And every territory ecosystem has a holding capacity, you know, beyond which it cannot, it's a carrying capacity that can be superseded, that can break down because it has been overloaded. And that's the concept that I want people to understand. So we like to call it illegal because, one, it is not prescribed in our plans, so it is illegal. But the much more fundamental issue to talk about is how do we avoid carrying out unsustainable development? Because if we take out one single dwelling unit where we have only a certain amount of road width, a certain amount of electricity supply, a certain amount of water supply, and we replace it with a unit that has 1,000 dwelling units. It's just simple logic. You need to augment the infrastructure and services to this site 1,000-fold. And that is really what I want people to understand, because the politics of urban development is usually that you do not want people to develop urban areas. Far from it. You want people to develop urban areas in a sustainable way. So if you replace a single dwelling unit with 1,000, ensure that supply of infrastructure and services is augmented 1,000 times to that particular area. That is the issue. That is the question that we must answer when we talk about unsustainability. And to the extent that a plan has not been rendered to bring that space to the level of holding or carrying capacity that is 1,000-fold the infrastructure and services required, it's unsustainable and it is illegal.
Folks, that is from Patrick. We're going to take a short commercial break. When we're back, solutions to this. Stay tuned. And welcome back from the commercial break, ladies and gentlemen. Now, joined with me, we have Patrick Adolwa, and he's telling us that we need to build 1,000-fold for the infrastructure that's coming up. Cherotitse is saying that Kenyans are on our own. So what is the solution?
We had opportunities with devolution to change what Cherotitse is saying.
Yes.
At the moment, perhaps her position is a sustainable position, that Kenyans feel that they are on their own, because urban systems are amorphous. Urban systems are not being constructed or constituted as communities. And so nobody feels that they own any particular space in an urban area. Everybody just exists in an amorphous system. So everybody is on their own. But the idea of urban systems was about building urban communities that are sustainable. That is why people had municipalities. That is why people had communes. That's why in Uganda, in municipalities, people have things called parishes, because they are attempts to create manageable communities, identifiable communities where people know each other on a one-to-one basis, and that they are built around community facilities such as churches and schools and libraries and so on and so forth. Okay? Now, that's the old Kenya, where a community was the school, the church, the library, the shopping precinct, and everybody knew everybody else. Over a radius of 2-3 kilometers, everybody knew everybody else.
Correct.
Today, you don't know anybody, you don't know your next door neighbor, you don't know who your councillor is, you don't know who your MCA is. You're on your own virtually, surviving on your TikTok, on your internet, and you don't know who to go to when your services break down. So I think we missed the opportunity, even though the Urban Areas and Cities Act has been established under the Constitution 2010, we missed the opportunity to create strong urban administrations around municipalities. And today, the concept municipality is much, much more weakened than even before the Constitution 2010.
Yet we are more.
Yet we are more. So one would have thought that with the coming of the Constitution 2010, Kenya would have much more robust, much more sophisticated, much better organized municipal entities with councillors that represent local areas and administrative units that understand local problems, that can render plans that will deliver infrastructure and services last mile to the neighborhoods, where people working for the municipalities are known to local communities and are responsible for the services. And that is something that we still need to return to, because that's what will take us away from being by ourselves. We need not to be on our own. We need to bring back a semblance of community in the urban areas, so that we are not alone. Yes.
What is the obstacle? This constitution was revised in 2010, but what's the obstacle today?
The Constitution of Kenya is by far one of the best constitutions that I can think of. The Constitution is blameless. It is our refusal to apply ourselves to the Constitution. It is our refusal to allow municipalities to take shape. It's not that the law isn't there, but the governors do not want to work with municipalities because they do not look at this arrangement between levels of government the way they should be looked at. The idea of a county was to deliver services to local places, but it did not invalidate the place of municipalities. Okay? So what we are looking for, so that we don't remain on our own, like Cherotich says, we need to reconstitute the municipalities. We need to allow them to work as semi-autonomous entities whose only responsibility is to deliver last mile urban services, which includes services like roads, sewers, okay? Last mile infrastructure, you know, water supply, street lighting, street cleansing, garbage. And that is something that we do not have today. That is something that even in Nairobi, we have some amorphous thing called barras or barrows. But the Urban Areas and Cities Act talks about the need to establish municipalities in counties. If instead of having 17 sub-counties in Nairobi area, we should actually have 17 municipalities. And I say this because the way sub-counties work is very different from the way municipalities work. Sub-counties are good in rural counties. Okay?
Yes.
Because they are simple administrative outposts. But in an urban area, instead of having sub-counties in an urban county like Nairobi and Mombasa, what you need is to decentralize to municipalities. Then you can have your supply of infrastructure and services. Then real estate can have a better, you know, deal, because then the planning services can be done in those 17 sub-county offices as, you know, municipal functions. Okay? Then you have all the approvals taking place in local places and not in centralized places like City Hall. Now, that is the one agenda that people should be talking about. In fact, the story of decentralizing Nairobi, for instance, is one that really needs a robust debate, because that's what will determine whether or not real estate gets the to the services that they require, the level of efficiency, turnaround of projects, the efficiency of supply of infrastructure and services on a day-to-day basis, you know, street cleansing, garbage collection, street lighting. All these things are not going to happen if you do not have the communities we are talking about.
Right.
But the community can only happen under the existing legal framework in a municipality.
In a municipality.
Yes.
Very well answered. Patrick, before we conclude, just sort of ask my second last question here. In terms of active citizenship, what can one do? Probably somebody is watching and they're trying to see how they can champion an agenda. What do you advise?
What people don't seem to realize is that local government elections or municipal elections or county elections are just as important as national elections. Because if you do not elect the right MCA, in active citizenship, we need to be very, very, very keen at the time that elections are being held. You're supposed to be asking the questions. What kind of neighborhood do I want to live in?
Yes.
What kind of schools do I want my children to go to? What kind of water, municipal services, sewer, public transport?
Okay.
There are many incidents of active citizenship. Okay, I mean, the neighborhood associations are actually the de facto, they are the de facto municipalities.
Yes.
Okay, and I keep on saying this, that if we had functional municipalities constituted by law, the neighborhood associations would not exist. The neighborhood associations exist because there is a vacuum. there is a leadership vacuum, there is a community organization vacuum. So these neighborhood associations have constituted themselves to serve a function which should have been provided for in law. Therefore, they speak to the real need for municipalities to be established in those neighborhoods, okay? Or a certain number of neighborhood associations can form a municipality where you can actually, relate to local leaders who are talking about electricity, water, services, and so on and so forth, security or insecurity, okay? Where the police station should be, where the approvals, what kind of development should happen in those neighborhoods. So this is not a far-fetched notion. This is something that is actually going on. A lot has been written about it, and that's the evidence that you need to know that citizen participation is required. But it is required much more robustly than currently is the practice, because a lot of people think that they do not have to take part in civic activities. But civic activities are the ones that affect your day-to-day life. And therefore, there is a huge place. If your neighborhood is going to be overrun by bad buildings and it's going to be overdeveloped and it's going to become a slum, it's because you have not constituted yourself in such a manner that you can control and determine what happens in your neighborhood. You have a runaway MCA who you did not elect. And in fact, the reason he's in office is because you did not participate in election. Because if we had very good elections, the majority of the MCAs would be these people who are chairmen of the neighborhood associations. They are professionals. They know what they want for the neighborhood. They actually live in those places. They're not strangers, So because we did not deliberately come out to vote, we did not have a choice. We had people being elected to represent us who had nothing to do with us. And that's the lesson we have to take away. In the next dispensation, you've got to determine who exactly represents you in the neighborhood. And you cannot do that from a distance. You've got to soil your hands.
Give us your parting shot.
I think we still have opportunities under the current constitutional dispensation. Not all is lost. Yes, a lot of water under the bridge. We need to do all the local plans, but the local plans must be supported by leadership. Let's establish strong municipalities, because if we don't have strong municipalities, everything is going to be run from a distance at the county headquarters, and you will never get the quality of development that you deserve. That's my parting shot.
I always love it when we have an insightful conversation on what can be done. Active citizenship, urban planning, just what needs to be fixed here in Nairobi or Kenya for that matter. This has been Property Focus. Remember, your one-stop shop to all market insights related to property. My name is Peter Ngigi. Keep it tuned till next week. See you same place, same time. Goodbye.